What is up, everybody? Josh Tapp here again, and welcome back to the Lucky Titan. And today we are here with Chris Kneeland. And guys, this is one of the conversations I've been looking forward to for some time because this guy really knows what he's talking about when it comes to creating a cult following. And in fact, his company is called Cult, C-U-L-T, not C-O-L-T. Okay. So this guy knows what it takes to really create a brand that is something like Coke or Barbie or something, like really iconic brands that we all know what they are, and take those and apply those to kind of the more non-sexy brands like yours and mine, where we're kind of the B2B agency types. We tend to run into the problem of not having a really strong brand or a cult following of people. So Chris, I'm excited to have you here today. Can you say what's up to everybody and we'll hop in?
What's up, everybody? Josh, it's great to meet you and really appreciate the chance to dive in a topic near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Chris, I do want to start this one off, kind of getting to know your story, right? That's part of the show for us, is helping people understand where you came from. What are your grassroots? We don't need some big long monologue, right? But just give us kind of that epiphany moment when you realized that you were good at branding, but when you realized that your company had legs.
I think I had maybe three pivot points that are worth mentioning. So I always grew up with an affinity for sort of marketing and advertising. My dad did it, and I enjoyed sort of the blend of art and science and creativity. But I always thought I was going to be like a VP of marketing at some big company. In fact, my goal coming out of graduate school was to work for the biggest, baddest brand I could get my hands on. And that ended up being John Deere. And at the time, I graduated in 1999. And so there was lots of discussion, a lot of retrospection about the brands of the century kind of thing. And John Deere was one of those top 10 brands of the century. And so that put them on my short list. And it was everything I hoped it would be in terms of getting a master class and how brands like that are built. But then the second epiphany came when I realized I actually didn't love being client side. What I love the most is the ideation and the challenging that maybe an agency or a consultancy can do. When you kind of get stuck client side, you're dealing more with budgeting and politics and getting the resources that you need to do things. And frankly, you're always solving the same problem every year. Like, you're at a company for a few years. It's like, haven't we done this before? Didn't we figure out Christmas or back to school or Mother's Day? It's like, so I got bored with it pretty quickly. So my second pivot was, I say selling my soul, but I went and joined an agency out of Dallas, Texas. And I loved everything about that culturally. But then what I didn't love, frankly, was when you work at an agency, you tend to see, I say you're a hammer looking for a nail. You see every problem through the lens of whatever your discipline is: TV commercials, websites, social media, PR, right? And the reality is, rarely is the solution just one of those things. And so my third epiphany came when I realized that maybe the answer is not better creative, but the answer is asking different questions about what about our product, about our customer experience, about our pricing. And I didn't find that when I wore the communications hat, I wasn't really being asked the right questions. We were just being asked to make things look pretty or sound funny or be cool or get viewed or go viral, versus we need to fix the business or we need to grow sales. And rarely were the communications solutions the right answer. So we had to stop being a communications agency and become a different species of consultant, a different sort of practitioner. So that's the journey we've been on for the past decade.
See, and that's awesome, because you've experienced really all that marketing has to offer, right? All of the different realms. And you've really landed now building your own agency that's, built around helping people grow a following, which ultimately, like you said, you're right there at the end, is a lot of us think that means going viral and things like that, but a lot of times it doesn't require that. So I do want to ask you, what's kind of your methodology and your process for taking somebody from zero to hero when it comes to branding?
So the important thing is that all we really did was discover something. We didn't have to invent it. We looked at, through our careers, you could take a John Deere as an example. You could take a Harley Davidson. You could take a Lululemon. As we would either work for or compete against a certain caliber of competitor, we would marvel at their fans or their customers' loyalty and adoration, and we would realize, wow, they're playing a different game. They're using a different playbook. Like, why is it so hard for us to steal share from certain types of businesses? So in an effort to try to understand them so we could compete with them, we discovered that they just have a different paradigm. They have a different belief structure, different behavior set that was so fascinating to us. We almost felt like, anthropologists or explorers. I mentioned I was just at Disneyland earlier because of your Star-Lord mask, but that Indiana Jones moment of look what we can discover here. And so now we almost just feel like missionaries. Like, let me just show you what I saw. Let me tell you what I just found over here. And it doesn't require a lot of budget. It just requires a different ambition. What are you actually trying to accomplish? Because just trying to grow your business is not enough. We like to say every business can have a customer, but cult brands do something different. These great brand leaders are trying to get cult-like followers. And if you're trying to get a cult-like follower, you're going to do things differently than if you're just trying to get somebody to transact.
Well, and I do have to interrupt you here because the part that's so interesting to me about that, right, is in theory, that can be done through social media and all of these different places. But what you're talking about is really something a lot deeper, right? It's like, and I like to look at it as, I mean, you look at network marketing companies, I think they're some of the greatest at building a cult-like following, whether you believe in the model or not. It's really interesting that people will just sell their lives, their soul, everything to these companies because of a dream or a hope. But I like to see what your take is on actually making that happen, because that's probably what most of the people listening are considering in their own mind, saying, is this something I could apply to a B2B business?
More businesses qualify than you'd expect. We spend more time, I think, helping businesses realize they actually have more cult brand potential than they give themselves credit for, than we do of somebody saying, I really want a cult brand, and we say, sorry, you don't have the ingredients to do so. And even if you don't achieve this sort of iconic cult-like status that Tesla or Nike has, it doesn't mean that you still can't reap the benefits of a super engaged customer base and a super engaged employee base. And right there is one of your tips, Josh, is this is not just a marketing job to get external audiences to fall in love with you. Some of the biggest beneficiaries of cult-like status are people that have hyper engaged employees. And that's a massive problem right now. In fact, I have more clients asking me to help with retention and acquisition of staff, given the Great Resignation and all the issues going on with HR right now, than I do even asking to help them get more customers in through the door. But yeah, a lot of it is, we always have to use cult-like follower. You can't just say follower, because social media has bastardized that term. I could care less how many social media followers you have. A cult-like follower is more, the best word for it really is an advocate, somebody who's willing to advocate on your behalf. And it's not in a lame net promoter score kind of way, which is really a customer satisfaction metric and some, verbal indicator. Sometimes if you're like me, I feel harassed by the salesperson to make sure I give them a 10 on their score because their commissions are tied to it and their job security. Like, I think net promoter score was an interesting idea that's failed to deliver on most of its promises. But there is something about people who advocate on behalf of your business that, if done well, you look at somebody like a Costco. Costco's over $100 billion and they do not advertise. Right. And that becomes a symptom that we get very interested in, is how do you achieve that level of success without a disproportionate spend in paid media, or worse, discounting? You start looking at a bunch of brands that are heavily discounting, and I start seeing those as cries for help. Those are brands that they've run out of all their good ideas, so now they're just bribing. Come in and I'll pay you, or I'll discount it so that they can just try me, please pick me. And that's a horrible place to be in.
Oh, I completely agree. And I want to kind of go back to the word advocate that you said earlier, because I really feel like you're bringing back to light. It's been a principle. It's been around since, marketing existed.
I like to say, ever since Eve said to Adam, hey, you should try this apple. Word of mouth marketing has been around from the beginning.
See, and that's beautiful. I'm totally going to quote you on that and steal that. So what I love about the word advocate, though, is, like you said, is that in today's marketing world, I feel like we're so promoted to have a great SEO strategy, to have a podcast, to have a YouTube channel, to have all of your social media channels taken care of, write a book, do all these different things to get your brand exposure. But they're missing that key element, right? The first day of class for me in my marketing class in my master's program, that was what we talked about, is how do you take them from not knowing you to an advocate where they're actively going out and promoting you to other people. And I think for me, the reason my mind goes to network marketing is that's immediately what they do, is once they sell you their product, they're like, okay, now go sell it. Right. And it creates this advocacy where they're involved with you. And I love that your company is really building that, like you said, for companies, I mean, like Costco, for example, right, where they're not doing any sort of ad spend, but they're $100 billion company. That's crazy. So from a B2B perspective, though, because most of the people listening to this are B2B, how does that fit, right? Because one of the problems I run into, right, is when somebody talks to me about branding or creating a cult-like following, it's always tied to creating another product. Where for us, we're like, we just want to stick to our lane. So walk me through what's that differentiation of, do you need to have a lot of different products in order to create this, or is it more of how you bring people into your world?
No, I think, you use the word exposure, and that's such an interesting word because I agree that most people have gotten distracted thinking that if they just get more exposure, life is going to somehow be better. And what I like to do is to take these discretionary marketing dollars where you have, finite choices, where you have to decide what you're going to do, and focus not on exposure, but on experience. And if you can enhance the customer experience, you do not need as much exposure because the people who have experienced it are going to go and talk on your behalf. Again, going back, I just have Disney on the mind. Disney is one of the world's most remarkable cult brands. So is Star Wars. Star Wars is a remarkable cult brand. And we did
now
that rise of the, have you done one of the Rise of Resistance rides at Disneyland?
I haven't, no, but
you've heard about this thing?
Oh yeah.
There's a new ride there that it just, you can't help but talk about it afterwards. It is so novel. It is so over the top exceptional that it creates, millions of Instagram feeds, or take, Tesla. My buddy just bought a Tesla and it has this ridiculous little feature where you could put a digital whoopee cushion in each of the different seats so that when somebody sits down, the car will make a virtual fart noise. It's like, somebody's thinking, that's why Tesla spends $0 on paid media, is that they said, why don't we just do something with the car, or Disney with this ride, or if you're in the B2B thing, with the procurement process, the sales pitch, the post-meeting follow-up. Let's give them something to talk about. It's actually it's the very first cult brand principle of being remarkable. And people think that when they hear being remarkable, that means they have to do something exceptional. It doesn't have to be exceptional. It has to be worthy of remarking about. The root of remarkable is remark, right? Get people talking. This best synonym is buzzworthy or noteworthy. And we're just so boring. We're so ordinary. We're so expected in everything that we do. And B2B in particular, they lack the courage and the creativity to break the mold. They're so worried about, procurement so buttoned up and we have to do everything by their, way. And like, no, you don't. That's not a law. Some person who has a personality and has a wife and a kid and a mortgage and has to make decisions wants to be inspired, wants to go home and have something to talk about. Give them something to talk about and use some of the money that would have gone into Google paid, advertising search words and put it into that experience.
Yeah, brilliant. See, and what I love about, your methodology with that, right, is the experience creates exposure.
Exactly.
Mean, like that chicken and egg situation, but in all reality, you've solved that dilemma. It's like,
and the best person to tell somebody about you is not you. The best person to tell somebody about you is somebody else who is unbiased and has, no ulterior motive. And so you have to create that conversational capital.
Well, so what's your take on referral fees and affiliates and things like that? Like, does that kind of corrupt the advocacy when somebody's getting financial remuneration for it, or is it?
We've done some tests on it. I would not use the word corrupt. I think it's a hack And sometimes hacks are good, and sometimes hacks are excuses for not doing the real thing. So you do the easy thing. If done well, I'm not on Disney. I'm not getting anything to promote Rise of the Resistance for Disney right now, right?
Right.
I'm doing it because I had such a positive experience. I want people I care about to benefit from that. So, I mean, the short answer is I'm not anti some sort of a monetary incentive or referral. I prefer non-monetary incentives that have high perceived value and lower actual cost. Things like access. I'll give you an example, Josh. We did a case study years ago for Geek Squad. This is before. Actually, this was right after Best Buy bought Geek Squad, but they were still a very small sort of tech support company, and they don't do any advertising. Did you?
I did in college.
They're also they had got to several $1 million without spending any money on advertising. Again, think about their experience, their uniforms, their fleet. It was almost like Disney. You got into character, and they became this sort of secret police that was running around fixing computers. Their founder had this wonderful quote that advertising is a tax that brands pay for being unremarkable. So if you want to pay the tax, or do you just want to pay to make the experience memorable? But we did a thing where if I got a Geek Squad service, the agent would leave me a secret 800 number. I'm doing air quotes here for your audio listeners. And it was kind of done under this guise of, okay, you're now one of us. You're in the queue. If you ever have a problem, you can use this sort of bat phone number that gets you right to the front of the line, but please don't give it to anybody. This is just something special for you. Wink, wink, right? I mean, the whole point was to get that 800 number out into the world, because now when my dad calls me and says, hey, my computer's crashed, or I can't get my streaming service to work, I'm like, hey, Dad, let me do you a favor. I know a guy. I got this special number. It's going to jump you to the front of the queue of the line. And I feel good helping my dad with some perk that I got. And it doesn't cost Geek Squad any money. It's not like they're giving my dad 10% off or anything like that. It was just this idea that you now are getting access that not the everyday person gets if you just picked up the yellow pages and called Geek Squad. So that actually performed better than a monetary incentive. We did a thing with John Deere back in the day as well, where we could offer people a John Deere hat or like a $50 gift card. So the hat cost us $4, retailed for $20. And the number of people that went freakish for the hat, like if I could get the hat that's not available at the store, but by helping us pass this thing along, in this case, it was an email forward program, you would get a hat, and people went gangbusters for it. So if you can find some, and then that's great as well, because now we got basically branded billboards on top of everybody's head, walking around town. So I think they just, again, the key words are courage and creativity. Think about something differently and have the guts to do something that not everybody else is doing.
Yeah, I love that. Where should people pull from to get that creativity? Because I know somebody like me, I am a creative person, but I'm creative within my own little box. And a lot of times I run into that creativity barrier of how do we make our brand, remarkable, especially to more en masse instead of, just to a tiny group of people.
Well, I mean, that's actually so when we stop being an ad agency, one of the problems with an ad agency is they give away a lot of the thinking for free in hopes of getting paid to do the work, to build the website, to do the Super Bowl commercial, whatever it might be. The money was really in the production. We said maybe people just need a little dose of inspiration, right? It's like we do 1 day, 1 week, 1 month engagements where somebody can come in and just give us just enough information to be dangerous. Like we don't have to know everything. We're never going to learn your business as well as you do. But maybe you just need some outside, enthusiasm and some objectivity and some creative firepower that doesn't have to result in a long-term, multi-year, multi-million-dollar sort of agency of record relationship. I think that that's asking for a pretty big commitment, and maybe you just need a little push to get over the edge.
Yeah, I love that. You're seeing that happen more too, as a lot of people are kind of creating these hybrid models where they're selling, like you said, more of that tactical strategy, creativity, and then the production is just kind of part of it. I mean, we recently hired an agency where, I'm usually sold when we hire an agency, I'm sold as, hey, you should pay us this monthly retainer, right? That's how we even work as a company, as a monthly retainer. But then they were just a one-time fee. but I had to use their software in order to use their methodology. So I paid them the money. They had great results, and we still pay them their software, which is like, I don't know, maybe less than $100 a month.
Right.
But they're at like $40 million in sales because of that. It's pretty crazy to see that, where they're literally doing something that every other person is doing right now, generating leads, and they're doing that for us for a one-time fee, but they're winning. It's quite interesting to see that happen. So I have so many more questions for you, but we have limited time here. So I do want to ask you this about events, because most people look at events as if it's like a lead generation activity. And I'm kind of curious how you use events, even for your own company, to actually generate buzz and create more of that advocacy for your company.
Yeah, my advice would be events are really poor lead gen. And whether that's you hosting an event or whether that's you paying for a trade show booth. I don't have any clients that feel good about the money they spend for their 10 by 10 foot booth on some showroom floor in Vegas, right? They're just like these necessary, they're perceived as these necessary evils. I don't believe in the whole thing. I do believe that, so we have an event. Our event is called The Gathering. You can find it at cultgathering.com, but it's not designed for lead generation. It is first and foremost designed to create conversation, again, remarkable, around even the idea of a cult brand. Cults are provocative things. Most people don't think of them with any sort of positive affinity. Like, people die and bad things happen with cults, right? And here we are saying, no, when used properly, the same principles that result in 1,000 people flying to, some South American village can be applied to your business. So use those powers for good, not for evil. And let me show you what that looks like. And here's Airbnb, or here's Harley Davidson, or here's the Dallas Cowboys, right? So I think an event is a wonderful way to expose people to an ideology or a framework. And then secondly, it allows us to keep our tools sharp. Every year, we have to look at hundreds of businesses and evaluate their cult potential and find, are there things that we overlooked? Are there things that we didn't know about yet? And so if we're going to be experts, nobody needs to know the inner workings of a cult brand better than my team. And the event allows us that format to be able to do that. And then with that expertise, we can go on and create products, services, or marketing that would generate leads. So we actually have a very strict non-solicitation policy of the people that we honor at the gathering, because we don't want to cross that line and turn it into something, or devolve it into something that's just, well, how many business cards were collected at the forum.
Right. It's not just a pitching conference. That's what I love, because there's multiple types of events I love going to. I like the ClickFunnels Funnel Hacking Live, right? It's a fantastic event that they use, kind of like yours, right? Where it's more of a way to generate that buzz and get people excited about funnels, for example. But then there's like the Grant Cardone conference, where if you've ever been to his 10X event, it's a 100% a pitching contest, really. And it's fantastic if you like being sold to, like me. It's a great place to go. But a lot of people go with this expectation that it's one thing when it's not. And so I love that you guys have created an event around that's like, let's generate buzz around creativity, really is what it comes down to. So where can people get access to that event again?
Cultgathering.com. We just announced the honored brands. We have TikTok, McDonald's, Chobani, Uno, which has become the number one selling game in the world through the pandemic, which I think was quite fun. There'll be dozens. And then there'll be Peloton, Netflix, brands that are just there talking about ways that they're fostering community and catering to rabid fans versus just being overly fixated on awareness.
Yeah, love that. Well, and where are you guys doing your event?
We do it in Banff, Alberta. We're at a 150-year-old castle that's sort of nestled in the Canadian Rockies, wildly inconvenient to get to by design. But we want there to be a pilgrimage of those that are the most committed to seeking out sort of this, light and knowledge. And so we were sort of inspired in our space. The Cannes Film Festival that happens in the south of France every year is sort of the Academy Awards of advertising. And we wanted to create something that could challenge that. And so we had to make ours sort of equally desirable and inconvenient.
I love that too. And it's I hope people are noticing this, because even just in what you're doing for your event is proving how good you are at what you do, because that whole thought process for most people is like, oh, we'll do it in Vegas. It's very accessible, or Miami or whatever. I can't tell you, if somebody tells me I have to go to Miami one more time to go to an event, I might shoot myself. I can't handle going. I hate Miami. But what you're talking about is like, they have to like probably even take a private plane to a certain place to get to where they're going. And I think that's so cool, because it creates that exclusivity.
Yeah.
Just in the fact of going to the events, it's going to lock it more into their brain. So brilliant. I love it. So everybody, make sure you go check that out. So it's The Gathering is the event. So make sure you guys go and get your tickets to that. I'm sure you guys are keeping it pretty exclusive. So make sure you guys hop in and grab your tickets there. And then Chris, can I ask you one final question?
Please.
If you could give an agency one final parting piece of guidance, what would that be?
An agency? Like an ad agency?
Like an ad agency. What you used to.
I would say that the craft of marketing has devolved. Most marketing departments I know are market downing departments, and most ad agencies I know are trying to create better stories. I'm not against an occasional sale, and I'm not against a story, but rarely is that what is plaguing a business. And I think we need to get back to the substantive issues at hand about the product, the service, the customer experience. It could be something as unsexy as the return policy. There are other things that are inhibiting businesses or customers from falling in love with their businesses. And having a fun 30-second spot at the commercial at the Super Bowl is not the answer. That is, I think, an abuse of power and a reckless overspend of millions of dollars that could have been put into something with a lot more substantive effect. And so I'm not anti-advertising, but I think that we need to think much more holistically about what we're asking our clients to spend their time and money on.